She thought no one would catch her. She thought stealing groceries was just another perk of being HOA president. She was wrong. If you enjoyed watching Karma catch up to Carolyn, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss another wild neighborhood drama. Got your own insane HOA story? Or a real-life Karen encounter? Drop it in the comments. We might just feature it next. Until then, keep your cameras rolling and your porches locked. It was a freezing Monday morning when I stepped onto my porch and stopped dead in my tracks. The wind howled down the street like a scream, and my breath came out in thick puffs as I looked at the empty space where my grocery box was supposed to be. Gone. No milk, no eggs, no vegetables, nothing. The porch was bare, except for a wet outline on the concrete where the box must have been. My phone buzzed delivery confirmed at 6:32. AMI checked the photo, attached to the delivery notification. There it was, a brown box sitting neatly in the exact spot where I stood now, staring in disbelief. I looked up and down the street. No one. No cars driving by. No neighbors out, walking their dogs. Just the wind and the unsettling quiet of a winter morning. I stepped inside, gripping my phone tight, and replayed the footage. From my doorbell, cam nothing, just static. It had been mysteriously deactivated between 6:15 and 6:40. The exact window, my groceries vanished. I felt something cold in my stomach that had nothing to do with the weather. This wasn't just a one-off mistake. This was the third Monday in a row that my deliveries had gone missing. Different drivers, different times. Always marked as completed, always gone without a trace. I had tried everything, called the store, spoke with customer service, reviewed the app history. Each time they swore the deliveries had been made, and each time they were right. But somehow, the food never made it inside. I glanced across the street to the two-story home with the flawless hedges and the garden gnomes standing in a perfect line. There she was, Carolyn, president of the HOA Power, walking in her pastel windbreaker earbuds, in lips pursed like she was sucking on a lemon. She didn't acknowledge me. She never did, unless it was to complain about the color of my mailbox or the height of my grass. She paused in front of her lawn, bent down to adjust a lawn ornament, then stood and looked straight at me. Her eyes narrowed for half a second. Then she turned and marched inside. I shook my head. No way. Not her, she would. Later that morning, I knocked on my neighbor Matt's door. He opened it in pajamas, holding a cup of coffee. I asked if he'd seen anything suspicious that morning. He said he hadn't even been awake before 7. I told him about the missing deliveries and the camera glitch. He laughed. Maybe a raccoon got really good at online shopping. I tried to laugh too, but it felt hollow. I was tired of losing food, tired of wasting money. And more than anything, I was tired of feeling like I was being toyed with. That evening, I walked the neighborhood hoping to spot anything out of the ordinary. Trash bins, out of place. Mail scattered anything. Nothing. Just Carolyn again, standing in her driveway, chatting with another board member. She spoke loud enough for me to hear. Some people just let their porches look like a donation center. We have standards in this neighborhood. I froze. She knew I looked at her, and she smiled without looking at me. A smile full of teeth and no warmth. That night, I called my friend Mark. He was the kind of guy who believed every problem had a clever solution. He said it sounded like someone was targeting me, deliberately and repeatedly. I asked him if he thought it could be Carolyn. He didn't hesitate. If anyone's that bold and nosy, it's her, he offered to lend me a motion-activated camera. Not one of those cloud-based apps, but an actual SD card model that recorded locally. No chance of glitching or interference. I agreed and picked it up the next day. By Thursday, I had it hidden in a flower pot. Beside the porch, the next delivery would be on Monday again. I scheduled it as usual, groceries. I actually needed, but now I had a backup plan. If the thief came again, I'd catch them. That weekend, I saw Carolyn trimming her rose bushes in a pair of bright pink gloves. She waved at another neighbor as they jogged past, but when I walked by, she turned her back. I didn't care. Let her act innocent. Let her pretend she wasn't doing anything wrong. But if she came for my groceries again, I'd have proof that. Sunday night, I packed the porch camera with a fresh battery and double-checked the angle-clear shot of the steps, the doormat, and the driveway. No blind spots. Then I went to bed. I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me sit up and check my phone. No alerts. Yet, the next morning, I was up at 6. I peeked out the window and saw the delivery truck pull up. The driver stepped out, placed the box on my porch, snapped a photo, and left. I waited 10 minutes 15. Then movement a figure emerged from the shadows. Couldn't see the face, but the stride, the posture, the robe. It looked familiar. They snatched the box and scurried away down the sidewalk toward the house, with the perfect hedges. I ran outside, but by the time I reached the street, they were gone. I didn't chase. I didn't yell. I just stood there, feeling the cold seep into my skin. Then I walked back inside, turned on the laptop, and opened the camera footage. There they were, caught in full view, not quite enough to prove anything in court, but enough to make my stomach twist, the timing, the direction, the body language, all of it pointed to one person, Carolyn. But I needed more. Real evidence, clear, undeniable proof. Because if I was right, if the HOA president really was stealing food off my porch, then I wasn't. Just dealing with a thief, I was dealing with someone who thought she was untouchable, and that meant this was far from over. The flower pot camera had worked better than I expected, and now I had something close to evidence, but not quite the smoking gun I needed. Still, the image of that figure sneaking up the steps, snatching the box, and vanishing down the street had burned itself into my mind. I watched it again and again, pausing at every frame, studying the posture, the angle of the walk, the way they carried the box, like it belonged to them. Everything pointed to Carolyn, but I knew that suspicion alone wouldn't be enough, not in this neighborhood, not with her iron grip on the HOA, so I did the only thing I could think of. I baited her. The next Monday, I ordered a decoy box, filled it with packaging foam and an old bag of rice, and sealed it with duct tape. I slapped a sticker on it that said, "Perishables urgent," and left it on the porch. The camera was armed, battery full, SD card ready. This time, I sat by the window, watching through a crack in the blinds. At 6:20, the street was silent. At 6:23, I saw her same robe, same slippers, same quick, furtive glance down the sidewalk. She moved fast, grabbed the box, tucked it under one arm, and disappeared around the corner, like she was on a timed mission. I waited a few minutes before retrieving the footage. The image was clearer this time. Face turned just enough to see her profile hair pulled back in a messy bun, exactly how she wore it during her early morning walks. I paused, it printed a still, and stared at the photo on my desk. I was close, so close, but still not airtight, so I walked to her house. Her garden was immaculate, not a leaf out of place, and her American flag fluttered proudly above her porch. I knocked a pause. Then the door creaked open, and Carolyn appeared wearing a new tracksuit and a frown that didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked me up and down like I was a mold stain on her siding. "What do you want?" I kept my tone even, just wondering if you've seen any suspicious activity in the neighborhood. I've had a few packages go missing. She smiled slowly. The kind of smile someone gives when they're already bored with you. Maybe you should bring them in faster. Leaving them out like that attracts all kinds of things. Animals, thieves, bad impressions. Her eyes flicked toward my porch, then back at me. "You might want to be more careful with what you put out in public. We have standards. You know." I thanked her and walked away, but my fists were clenched the entire time. She wasn't even pretending anymore. She was taunting me. The next day, a notice appeared on my door from the HOA violation improper porch storage. It listed the decoy box I had left as an example of neighborhood clutter and warned that future violations could result in fines. I stared at the paper and felt my blood boil. She wasn't just stealing. Now she was using her position to punish me for trying to catch her. I walked into the HOA office the next afternoon, ready to fight it. But the meeting was already in full swing. Carolyn, at the head of the table, surrounded by nodding heads and polite smiles, I waited for her to finish her little speech about community integrity before stepping forward. I told them about the missing groceries, the suspicious footage, the pattern. I said I had reason to believe someone on this very board might be responsible. The room went quiet. Carolyn raised an eyebrow. "Are you accusing a board member of theft? Do you have proof?" I said I had footage and witnesses, and that this wasn't the first time someone had reported strange behavior. She leaned forward, hands folded, and smiled. "Then please share the footage. Because if there's someone threatening our community, I'd like them dealt with swiftly." There was something venomous in her voice, a trap behind every word. I played a short clip. From the porch, camera gasps rippled through the room as the blurry figure appeared, snatching the box and rushing off into the dark. Someone said, "That looks a lot like your robe, Carolyn." She laughed. "Oh, please. Do you think I run around stealing groceries? In my bathrobe, I wear Chanel, not Walmart. Besides, you can't even see the face. That could be anyone." And just like that, the tide shifted. People looked away, nodded uncomfortably, muttered about privacy and speculation. The meeting ended with no action taken and a stern reminder about slanderous accusations. I walked out feeling worse than when I went in. She had turned the entire board against me. With a few smug comments and a fake laugh, I called Mark that night, told him everything. He didn't hesitate. "Need something better, something she can't laugh off. We'll set a trap she won't see coming, something that hits her where it hurts." I asked what he meant. He said, "She's arrogant. She thinks no one can touch her. That makes her predictable. We can use." That I stayed up late thinking about it. The groceries, the camera, the decoy box, all clever, but none definitive. She knew how to play this game. She wore entitlement like armor, and her position gave her cover. I had to find a way to get past all that, to strip it away, and show everyone exactly who she was. And for that, I needed to beat her at her own game. Not just catch her, expose her. So I did something she would never expect. I smiled because now I had a plan, and if it worked, she'd never see it coming. Mark showed up the next morning with a black duffel bag, and that look on his face, the one he wore back in college when we pulled off the senior prank that got us banned from the science building for a week. He dumped the contents onto my kitchen. Table 2, hidden cameras, a voice recorder, a set of dummy boxes with pressure sensors, and a brand new Wi-Fi router with military-grade encryption. If we're doing this, we're doing it, right? I asked if it was all legal. He grinned legal enough. We spent the entire afternoon wiring my porch and surrounding bushes with equipment so subtle even a hawk couldn't spot it. The real trick, though, was the pressure sensor. We hid it under the doormat with a microchip connected to the doorbell cam that triggered simultaneous recording from every angle. The second someone lifted the decoy box, even better, the new router locked down the feed, so no external interference could disable it. No more convenient camera glitches. No more excuses. The bait box looked real, had logos, a fake invoice, a barcode, and a sticker that read, "Signature not required." Inside, we packed it with bricks wrapped in bubble wrap, just heavy enough to be convincing, but still easy to lift. Then we waited. The next delivery was scheduled for Thursday morning. I left the box out at 5:45 a.m., just like the last time. At 6:22, the sensors lit up. I was watching the live feed from inside the house, coffee in hand, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. There she was, Carolyn, in a different robe this time, a dark navy blue with white trim, probably to throw off suspicion. She crept up the porch, looked both ways, like a cartoon burglar, then bent over and grabbed the box. The second she lifted it, the sensors triggered, and all three cameras kicked in at once. Crystal clear footage from multiple angles caught her face, her hands, her slippers, even the key she carried with a tiny HOA charm dangling from the ring. She paused halfway down the steps and glanced back at the camera for a second. I thought she realized. But then she smiled. She actually smiled, then walked off as if nothing had happened. I sat frozen for a full minute. Then Mark, who had been monitoring from his laptop in the living room, let out a low whistle. Gotcha. Uploaded the footage to a secure cloud and made 3 backups on different drives. Then I made a call to someone I never thought I'd speak to again. My cousin Rachel worked in local news and owed me a favor from years ago when I helped her out of a nasty rental situation. She listened carefully as I explained everything. The theft, the footage, the HOA pressure. Then she asked a single question. Is it juicy enough to go viral? I sent her the video. She called me back in 5 minutes. Flat. We're airing it Monday, but you have to be on camera. I hesitated but agreed, because it wasn't just about groceries anymore. It was about standing up to someone who thought rules were for everyone else. Monday morning arrived with a strange mix of nerves and satisfaction. I stood on my porch, dressed casually with a hot mug of coffee, while Rachel's cameraman got the final shots. Carolyn passed by during her usual power walk, wearing sunglasses and a face that could curdle milk. She didn't say a word, but her pace quickened when she saw the microphone. That night, the segment aired on local news right after the weather. They led with the headline, HOA President Caught on Camera Stealing Groceries from Neighbor. The video played in full slow motion. Clips circled her face, paused on the HOA keychain, and ended with a split screen showing her smirking at the camera while holding the stolen box. It took less than an hour for the clip to hit social media. By midnight, it had over 200,000 views. By morning, people were tagging the HOA page, demanding answers. I woke up to a knock on the door. It was Greg from the HOA board, and he looked like someone had just told him his house was built on a sinkhole. He asked if we could talk. I invited him in and offered him coffee. He declined. He wanted to know if I intended to press charges. I said I hadn't decided yet. He said Carolyn had called an emergency board meeting and that her story was that she thought the packages were abandoned donations. Almost choked. Donations? She's stealing groceries and calling it charity. Greg didn't defend her. He just looked tired. He said the board would likely vote to suspend her pending investigation, but they needed more formal documentation. I handed him a flash drive with the footage and a printed timeline of every incident, including dates, delivery records, and violation notices. He took it with both hands, like it weighed 10 pounds. Before he left, he turned and said, "I never liked how she handled things, but no one ever stood up to her before." I nodded and closed the door behind him. Later that afternoon, Rachel called again. The story had gone national. A popular influencer had reposted the clip with the caption, "When Karen runs the HOA and thinks, your porch is her pantry." The comments were brutal. People were reenacting the footage in parody videos, even dressing up in bathrobes and stealing fake boxes for TikTok. It was glorious. Still, Carolyn hadn't said a word publicly. No apology, no denial, no explanation. But the silence only made it worse. She was trending for all the wrong reasons, and she knew it. I spotted her that evening peeking through her blinds, watching as a group of teens walked by, laughing and pointing at her house. The tables had turned, but I wasn't done yet, because if she thought this was the peak, she was in for a surprise. Carolyn called an emergency town hall on Wednesday, hoping to spin the story before it consumed her completely. She posted official HOA notices on every door, demanding attendance for what she labeled a community misinformation crisis. I showed up. Early sat front row calm, composed with my arms crossed, and Mark beside me recording discreetly from his phone. The community center was packed, standing room only neighbors, whispering laughter, buzzing like flies in the heat of scandal. Carolyn strutted, in wearing a pressed blazer and a fake pearl necklace. Lips curled into a smile so forced it looked like it hurt. She stood at the podium, cleared her throat, and began. "Good evening, friends and fellow residents, as many of you have seen on social media. There is a video circulating that has led to some misunderstandings about my conduct as HOA president." She paused, expecting sympathy, maybe applause. She got silence. "What you saw was a clip taken out of context, meant to humiliate and discredit me. I assure you, I believed those packages were part of a Porch donation initiative discussed at our last closed HOA session." I stood up. There was no donation initiative. "That's a lie." She blinked. "I beg your pardon. I said you stole from me multiple times. I have dates, times, footage, and formal complaints. You ignored. You fined me for trying to catch you in the act. And now you're lying to save face." The crowd murmured. She raised a hand. "Please let me finish." I stepped forward, holding up a flash drive. "This has every incident backed up and logged with timestamps along with copies of the violations you sent me after each theft. This has already been turned over to the board and the local police." Someone from the back shouted, "Let's play it again." Laughter erupted. Carolyn's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies. Finding none, she looked smaller somehow, her posture shrinking, her voice thinner when she spoke again. "This meeting is adjourned until further notice." She tried to walk off stage, but stumbled her heel, catching on the edge of the podium, nearly sending her sprawling. More laughter. Mark whispered, "Karma's got good aim." She hurried out, red-faced, to the sound of chuckling neighbors and a few scattered claps, not for her, for me. That night, the police came to her house. 2 officers in uniform, clipboard in hand, knocking firmly until she opened the door. She argued for a moment, tried to shut the door, but one officer placed his foot calmly against it and handed her a summons. The image of her receiving it was caught by a neighbor who posted it to Facebook with the caption, "HOA Queen Gets Dethroned." It went viral in less than an hour. The comments were savage. By morning local news ran another update, this time with an official police statement. Carolyn Hawthorne, HOA president, under investigation for theft, trespassing, and abuse of authority. I watched the segment sipping coffee from my porch as joggers passed by offering thumbs up and nods. Even Greg stopped by holding a cupcake. In a to-go container, he said the board had voted unanimously to remove her from her position effective immediately, and offered me a temporary seat until a formal election could be held. I declined politely. I said I'd had enough HOA politics to last a lifetime. He laughed and said, "Can't blame you." That weekend, I got a new delivery, this time from the grocery service, with a note handwritten in perfect cursive. "Thank you for catching her. We had no idea why so many of your orders vanished. Inside were gourmet snacks, free of charge, and a gift card for future deliveries." It felt like closure. On Sunday morning, I went for a walk. Birds chirped, kids rode scooters. Neighbors waved. Peace had returned as I rounded the corner. I saw Carolyn again for the HOA fee. First time since the town hall. She was in sweatpants. No makeup, hood, up pulling weeds from her flower bed alone. No robe, no clipboard, no entourage, just her and the dirt. She looked up, saw me, and froze. I nodded once, then walked past. She didn't say a word. Later that week, someone posted a meme that sealed her internet legacy. It was a screenshot of her mid-theft, mouth open, eyes wide, with the caption, "When the HOA president thinks stealing your groceries is part of her benefits." Package. It hit 1 million views. Before sundown, the final nail weeks passed. Life returned to normal. The HOA calmed down, became manageable, even friendly, under new leadership. Neighbors talked more, shared more, smiled more. It was like the fear had lifted. And as for me, I never lost another package, not one. But every time I hear the soft thud of a delivery box hitting my porch, I can't help but smile. Because now I know some people need to be exposed. Not just stopped exposed. Because only when the mask is ripped off can the rest of us breathe. Easy, and sometimes all it takes is a camera, a plan, and the will to stand up, even to a Karen in power, especially to her.